Hello and welcome back to another video. Today going to be giving some more in-depth thoughts on the Crew Motorfest after playing it for a little bit longer. I did already do a video on my first 30 minutes of gameplay and initial impressions so far, so for those who missed it I'll quickly summarise that first, when I loaded into the game my initial impressions, before going over each aspect of the game in more detail after playing just over 3 hours or so of the closed beta recently. Please keep in mind throughout this video that this isn't quite the fully polished final game that will be released in September. To begin with, of course, there were the usual settings, the choice of difficulty, the brightness, etc., but also the choice of whether you wanted to import your collection of vehicles from the Crew 2, which of course is a feature of this new title, which I didn't do at the moment, partly as I wanted to experience it from the beginning as the progression was kind of intended, but partly as that was on another platform, actually on Xbox, where this is on PC, which apparently is still possible to port forward if they're both connected to the same Ubisoft account. Anyway, I didn't at this point, but I think a little way into the full game I will attempt to import them, although I previously wasn't quite sure about it, just because it is quite hard to attain cars in the Crew, so I kind of want to port forward my collection at some point after I've progressed through most of the campaign as it was intended. I'm not actually sure if it's on the same Ubisoft account or not, but I'll definitely give it a go and see if I can get my cars forward from the Crew 2. But yes, enough of that rather niche problem I have. Immediately after that though, you're thrown straight into an exciting cutscene introduction, giving a great first impression of the game and introducing you to how the game works and stuff, including the themed playlists, which you're given a glimpse of a few of, starting with being thrown straight into the most overrated car of all time, Ant Supra. Of course, this gives us our first chance to experience the handling and physics as well, and see if it feels any more like the controls are actually connected to anything than the Crew 2 did. To be fair to the Crew 2, it's allegedly improved quite a lot in this area at this point, but I haven't played it for several months, so I can't really comment myself, but from what others have said, it has substantially improved over what it was like when that game launched, for example. In Motorfest though, I'm pleased to report that my first impressions were pretty good. It immediately felt like it had more feeling than the Crew 2 did from what I can remember, but onto that in more detail later. One of the most impressive things that stood out to me this early on was how incredible this game looks. It is pretty stunning. It's no Gran Turismo or Forza Horizon, but compared to the Crew 2, it looks really, really good. It keeps the sort of feeling of that game, but makes it so much better visually. As well as the Supra, like I said earlier, you're giving a taste of a few other playlists, including the classic playlist driving an AC Cobra, and the Motorsport playlist driving a fictional Formula car. This prologue section then culminates in you being shown to the Motorfest, where you are given a choice of 3 low-end starter cars. I know, low-end starter cars, imagine that in 2023. We want hypercars straight away. Then you are free to enjoy the game with no further instruction, which is excellent. You can go and do whatever you want, wherever you want in this excellent map. So then, that was kind of my initial impressions from the first half an hour of gameplay, which like I say, I did already do a video on if you want to see more of my first experience of the game. For today's video though, let's start by getting straight into the most worrying topic when it comes to a game from this series, the handling and physics, which I briefly touched on in that introduction section. Like I said, they're a huge improvement over the Crew 2, which felt pretty loose and uncontrollable a lot of the time. To be fair to that game, like I say, I may only have that opinion as I haven't played it for ages, and I have heard from others that have played it more recently that it has dramatically improved of late, and it's now much better than it used to be. So it may not actually be as big an improvement as I think, however it's certainly much better than I remember that game being. If you were put off that game because of how it handled and felt early on, then do give this one a try, as it is much more enjoyable than that was when that first came out, because that kind of ruined that game a little bit. I know for a lot of people it did. For me it was still worth playing for the huge map and the road trips and stuff you could do and the customization and everything, but for a lot of people it put them off coming back to the game. Which is a shame, because it was an excellent game in a lot of other ways. It is by no means perfect, the handling, but it is certainly better than that game was. It's of course no Forza Horizon, but it's not really supposed to be. It's aimed at being much more of an arcade game than even that. I know that still is, but yes, it's aimed at being a really towards the arcade side of things, which I think it actually does really, really well now. The only thing I did find, though, was it was a bit unpredictable when the car started to slide, kind of how it was before, which is incredibly irritating, but generally the handling is improved. Drift class vehicles, of course, slide better, but I kind of hate how games have class systems where cars in each one handle differently. It just means the handling's not been done very well if you have to have different ones for different things. Why do it? Just make it work for everything. Just let us tune them differently or something. Anyway, that's a whole separate rant for another day. Overall, the handling in this game feels pretty good, but is of course still arcade, because that's what the game's aimed at being. Like I said before, the overwhelming first thing I noticed was how good this game looks compared to the previous title, but also just in general. It's not quite on the level of some of its rivals, but those are much bigger studios, to be fair, to Ivory Tower, things like Forza and Gran Turismo. They've also done a great job of keeping the look and feel of a game from this series, whilst also making it a beautiful, beautiful game to play. This, of course, is helped by the location as well, which in itself is stunning. As you may know by now, it's set on a Hawaiian island of Oahu, just like a certain couple of legendary Test Drive Unlimited games from the past were. This gives a huge hit of nostalgia when driving in certain areas, which might also be slightly swaying my opinion on the visuals and the map, but it is a brilliant, brilliant location, as we know from those games. Unlike those games, though, the island isn't a one-to-one replica, so it's a far smaller map that is kind of Test Drive Unlimited's USP to be one-to-one scale, so I kind of get why they haven't done that, which of course is going to be the same in the upcoming Solar Crown game. One advantage of not doing a one-to-one replica, though, is that they can use more creative license and improve certain areas of the map to make them better for driving enjoyment, which, from the bits I've driven, I think they've done a pretty good job of. So there's more you can do if you don't do that, and it fits this style of game better than doing a one-to-one replica like Test Drive did, I think. And don't forget, we will have Test Drive coming soon with a one-to-one scale island, so we'll have that option as well. So it's kind of good that they've taken different directions there. It's actually a really nice mix of the Crew 2's style, but in a nostalgic location from those Test Drive Unlimited games. So far, the map as well is pretty good, even if it is smaller than those games and, of course, than the Crew 2. The campaign in this game is made up of different themed playlists, which there are not a huge number of at the moment, but enough to keep us busy for a while, and many more are promised to be added in future updates. If the previous game is anything to go by, I can believe that. The Crew 2 has had the best post-release support imaginable, with huge updates still being added even with the imminent release of Motorfest. I actually didn't really get properly into the campaign with the limited time I had with this game, but the introduction to each playlist gave a great taster of how all the themes will differ. I got a glimpse of the classic playlist, the Japanese playlist, and the motorsport-themed playlist in that very first section. I really love how different each one feels with the added props, lighting, and the choices of cars in each one, as well as, for example, the classic playlist having music that fits the era in the different chapters, and things like boost and GPS switched off to make it more accurate to that era. Each one captures the vibe of the particular theme it's aiming for perfectly, making each playlist feel truly different to one another, and all incredible to take part in. I think my favourite one so far is the classic playlist, so I'll be making sure to make that one of the first ones I play when the full game releases in September. For even further variety after the initial introduction, I attempted the Grand Race, or an online race if you want to translate it into English. Being the Grand Race though, it is a bit more than just an online race. It makes the most of the vehicle switching feature, changing for each part of this rather long race. The lobbies in this mode are also huge. I'm not sure of exact numbers, but there are over 20 people in the race I took part in, so I'd imagine it's around 30 that are in each of these. Remember, for comparison, that Forza only allows 12 people in a race, and Need for Speed only allows 8, which is truly awful. As you might expect, having this many players, though, does have some issues. Kind of imagine a Forza lobby multiplied by at least 2. the driving standards were at least as bad as they would be in any other game, with plenty of wall riding and ramming everywhere, and with that many more people, it was absolute chaos. But it was a longer circuit, so the chaos was kind of more spread out, and it sort of worked itself out. Despite all of that, though, it was still a really fun experience, and I love that the lobbies are bigger and the races are longer than in other rival titles, or at least that option is there. That's not the only mode, though. There are several others if you want something different, including the return of the Demolition Derby style events. Just like the main campaign races then, there's a lot of variety to choose from here too, so there's kind of endless things to do, and that's before they've added even more things, which they inevitably will in updates. The car list is very good. It's similar to the Crew 2, I believe, including most, if not all, of the vehicles from that game, as well as some excellent additions like the brand new Lamborghini Revolting, and although personally I couldn't really care less, Toyota is finally now present. But they've finally come to this game as well. The difficulties with them have finally ended completely, I hope. Everything in the car list, though, is still priced extortionately, making it almost impossible to actually buy all that many of the higher-end cars. It simply takes too long to earn anything. Still better than throwing free cars at you, I guess, like other games have gone in the direction of. But for that reason, I will try to import my car collection a little bit down the line once I've played through some of the campaign. The customization on these cars is, as ever, incredible, with a huge number of custom parts for all aspects of almost every car, apart from the racing vehicles. Again, I think all parts that are available in the Crew 2 are available in this game, and as well as the car customization, there is of course extensive character customization, as you might expect in any modern game these days. I think that covers all the main aspects of the game, but there were a few other things that I noticed and discovered whilst playing the closed beta. One thing I'm super happy about is now the controller layout is fully customizable, which I don't think it was in the Crew 2. I certainly couldn't find how to do it if it was, which is good because manual controls on default configuration was interesting, to say the least. Now, though, there are some preset configurations that actually make sense, and even if those don't suit you for whatever reason, you can now make completely custom layouts, which you definitely couldn't when that game launched, but I don't know if it got added in the future. Or maybe I just missed something really obvious, but I don't remember that being in there, and it's definitely an option here, so that's great. There are also much more extensive tuning options than in previous games, although I didn't get a chance to fully explore how the different settings affect the car. And also not sure if this detail was in the Crew 2, but if you use the horn whilst on a bike, your character also does hand gestures. If it was in the previous game, I somehow never noticed that before either. I did also, whilst exploring, find a loot box, which of course returned from the Crew 2, so I think a few new things have been added, and most features from the previous title do return. But one thing that has gone since the previous game is the houses, or the headquarter buildings in that game, which is a shame because it was nice to have a sort of home you could wander around and be able to display your vehicles and things, but it's not the end of the world not having that. We will have hotel rooms in Solar Crown, so if you want that, play that game. But yeah, this game is looking pretty good so far. So yes, so far I have really enjoyed this game, although, like I say, it's still very early impressions. I only had 3 hours or so with the closed beta, so keep in mind I haven't played loads of this, so there may be more things that I notice when I play some more of the hopefully open beta, but also the full game. Please also keep in mind that as this is the closed beta, it's not fully finished at this stage, but it will be kind of more polished when it comes out in September, if you notice any glitchiness or anything. The handling has improved, but still isn't perfect. The visuals are beautiful, it's a great location, there's a varied campaign and a huge selection of online races, some of which in themselves are huge, have big lobbies and long distances. Most, if not all, cars return from the Crew 2. This series continues to offer incredible amounts of customization, and the tuning and options and things for controllers and everything are more extensive than ever before. Overall then, the first impressions are that this game is truly fantastic. Like I say though, it is early days, I've only played about 3 hours of this. I can't wait though to play more of the Crew Motorfest hopefully in the open beta stage, but also the full version, of course, when it releases in September, which really isn't that far away at this point. For now, though, that is going to be all. Do let me know what you think of the Crew Motorfest, whether you've played some of the closed beta or your impressions from what you've seen so far of the game. And let me know whether you're planning to get hold of this or not, or whether you've already pre-ordered it. But like I say, for now that is going to be all. So thank you very much for watching, and I will be back with the next video very soon.